morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Abhijit Bhaduri. I work with organizations on upskilling them for the AI economy. And so does my friend Todd. Todd, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Todd McLeese. I work with around 100 different organizations in the United States right now on AI strategy, especially around generative AI. And we do AI training and upskilling, both in terms of how to leverage generative AI, but also the high cognitive and socio-emotional skills, the human skills that really will play a huge part in the AI economy.
So I asked people on LinkedIn, and we got a great set of responses 56,000 impressions and almost 800 votes. And 52%, more than half the people said they use it less than 15 minutes per day.
Well, the 52% is not surprising to me, Abhijit. The thing that really blew me away is I leverage Gen AI roughly 30 hours a week, talk about it the other 30 hours each week. I was blown away at the 12% or 32% that use it more than 2 hours a day. Certainly
Yeah.
the 12% more than 4 hours a day. I think that's really significant compared to most of the recent data out there in terms of the Microsoft LinkedIn study, and then I think it was Gallup or Pew that came out with data that talked about just 7% of people using it regularly. So your audience certainly are heavy users compared to most.
My audience is actually, it's quite a spread, but I am really always thankful for how much they are able to share their world. And I was particularly impressed with this week's announcement. There's two big ones. You have Apple doing their launch with the AI powered phones and the private cloud in which data is going to reside. And of course, you also have Eric Schmidt talking about how
Yeah.
rapidly did that number do anything for you? How rapidly Gen AI is improving, and what was your take on that?
So that podcast that Eric Schmidt did, I would say, I think Apple plays chess, not checkers. So I wasn't blown away by what Apple announced this week. However, you know that there are bigger plans in the offing with regard to AI, and this is just a logical entry point for them on those devices, and certainly for OpenAI, it's big news. When I think about that Eric Schmidt video, they say it's the hardest thing for humans to get their head around is exponential versus linear improvement. This is the first time that I really came to understand uh, how AI will scale quite naturally over the next 3 to 5 years. And it helps me understand that I've been thinking about this even though I'm out in front and talking to people about how to adopt this and use it strategically, like just like you are. I've been thinking about it too small. When he talks about in this podcast, a 1 to 10,000 times improvement in language models in the next 3 to 5 years, and there are four variables associated with it. The two 10x's that he said they're inevitable at this point is a 10x improvement in the hardware and a 10x improvement or in the amount of data that the models are being trained on. And the other two variables, which might move around a little bit, hence the range between 1 and 10,000, is how engineering will improve and how the science of language models will improve. When I think about what we teach people to do today with generative AI, to co-create, to use it to generate strategic value, and I try to put a multiplier of 1,000x on that, I'm still
It's
thinking about it.
inadequate.
Yeah,
It's not
I
enough.
was listening to the podcast on my way down to Chicago. I called you. I pressed pause on the podcast and called you right away, and we talked through it. And it's a few days later now, and I'm still reeling from it, just trying to think through. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? And I'm actually working in a session with ChatGPT right now to work through these exponentials of if it gets 10 times better, what are the implications? If it gets 100 times better, so we can help visualize this and illustrate that for others so people can start to wrap their heads around what sort of system level change has to occur in what is a really short period of time.
And that's really what I think we should really talk about. How do you generate intrinsic value from Gen AI? And I like to just last time when we spoke about human skills for the AI economy, a lot of people wanted me to show the sort of chart, and here is what it is. And if you see the right hand top quadrant, and if you see on the left, right top line left, you can see AI agility, and that I think is really where we are today. So we are actually going to talk about a bunch of different things today. So Todd and I, we thought that we should really make a beginning. Last time we talked about different components of AI agility, and we said there are six broad components of AI agility. Forging human partnerships, at the optimal level, Gen AI literacy, prompt design, and creating intrinsic business value with Gen AI. So this is the third piece, the micro skill that we are going to be talking about. This is what people can do to bring value to the organizations that they are working with right now. Todd, how would you describe the other three?
Well, the other three on the other side are what the organization brings to the table, and certainly impacts people. And there are elements here for individuals to get their arms around as well. But around responsible AI, navigating the skills-based economy, and what that means in terms of how work will change because of the improvements in generative AI and all forms of AI, and the impact that's having on work, worker and workplace, to borrow a term from you. And then the human skills that you just put the seventh version of the matrix up there, the framework. But again, those skills that are harder for Gen AI or AI to replicate or automate. Of course, if you throw 1,000x on top of it, or 10,000x, I think that's why I'm still reeling, because maybe emotional intelligence, maybe it becomes the most emotionally intelligent species at that point if it's 10,000x where it is today. I will say that in terms of intrinsic value, that left side of the framework for AI agility, we spend so much time, you and I both, with institutions of higher education and school systems, and there's a lot of focus on AI literacy, leveraging AI, maybe learning something around the ethics of AI, et cetera. AI literacy is important. It's an important fundamental aspect. People have to know how to use the tool, what the landscape looks like, and so forth. But it feels like we're shoving literacy into a box that might be less relevant today than it has been with other disciplines, even technological disciplines in the past. To me, what is most important is that we teach people how to co-create, to work alongside AI in a way that is very different. This is the most human-like technology that we've ever discovered or created in our history. And the way you collaborate with that technology is very different, and the risks are very real, and the opportunities are very real. They're tangible and profound. And so teaching people how to build healthy and sustainable habits to build these optimal relationships is absolutely first and foremost. This piece that we're talking about today around creating intrinsic value, as we travel around and work with corporations on implementing generative AI in their organization, you know that we go in and talk to companies who are using generative AI widely. Your poll is a great indicator of 54% of people using it 15 minutes a day, 32% of people using it for multiple hours a day. Are they using it transactionally? As an answer machine? Are they using it to replace Google search? Are they using it for co-creation and creating things that that aligns with the business objectives and presents strategic value opportunities to the organization?
Newsletter on LinkedIn, I actually talked about one of the big mistakes that I see organizations making, which is that they straight away jump in, and somebody out there at the C-suite panics, and that's been one of the things that I've seen repeat as a pattern, not just with Gen AI but also otherwise. So everybody sort of says that somebody will say, now we are going to sort of do this. This is mandatory. You got to do it. And, this many hours, you have to complete this 5 certifications before the next month, or else. That's one of the worst ways in which we upskill people. We really put hatred for learning, when we do it that way. And I think one of the best ways that, as in, this has been one of my attempts, is how do you put fun into learning and sort of take away this whole, we start by saying, give me the ROI on this, give me the ROI on that. I think when you start to make it fun to engage with, and you become friends with somebody, and you have to make sure that you understand each other's language. Productivity is a natural byproduct. I don't think we should really be spending too much time and energy on that. I really think the opportunity lies in moving to the strategic level, and which is where I think as organizations move away from this transactional value that we are going to do 30% more and 20% less, and all of those will be byproducts. But I think the real opportunity, if you start to think about the strategic shifts that are possible, the new markets that you could do, the new product designs, the new customer opportunities, I think, and today that's really what I want to spend time with you. And I just really thought that this is a great chart that you've made, and I really like this one. Um, Talk to me about this entire process of the four levels of value creation from tactical to strategic.
Sure. First of all, in response to what you just used as an introduction, it's also the very natural way that we've implemented technologies throughout decades, right? We go
Mm,
from not adopting it as an organization to trying to control it and to issue edicts and say this is now the priority, etc. And then it's only later in our organizational capability maturity that we start to manage it and think about things more proactively. In this case, especially with AI, it may be too late culturally if we try to take the path that seems intuitive in terms of adopting the technology. Now, as it relates to the framework here, we go in with the thought of the companies that engage with us, they're either just beginning, they've thought about it, they're just beginning to adopt it. There are little pockets of people using it, and they're using it for that productivity bump. It starts with coding, it starts in HR, it could start anywhere in the organization, but it's not systematic, it's not widespread, etc. And they're using it typically for very tactical use cases. So our goal is transactional to transformational, tactical to strategic, right? And we want to move people through this continuum. Typically, within about 6 months of organizations using the tools in the level one range, they're ready to go. And our goal and our job is really to accelerate this, um, going from level one to level two faster, to help leaders understand that they may not need to be the most proficient users in the organization. They need to know enough, but they also need to understand how this connects to their organization's principles, to their objectives, etc. And identification of use case or opportunities to add AI into their value chain, that starts to get into a level two and a level three conversation around scalability and around transformation. And those are the messages that they can bring to the people who should be using this at scale within their organization.
In HR, one of the places which is seeing a lot of shift, which is happening, is hiring. That's good. That's seeing a lot of Gen AI usage, but it's again very transactional. For example, candidates are using it to write their resume and sort of auto apply to. There are, and I've written about it in my last newsletter, that for a small fee you can get them to apply to almost 300 open jobs. But what it does is, there's a sort of problem that employers are also going to counter that with a certain kind of a way to sift out what is being written by Gen AI, what's being written genuinely by an individual who's applying for it. So it's still like playing chess at the very, very tactical level. And I think it's missing the whole opportunity to implement it in different parts of the organization to really start saying, what is the new role of HR that it should be? So I think that's the
Yeah.
real opportunity. How do you change the function of what HR has done? And it often happens that organizations start by sort of taking what they've always done and making tweaks, so it still looks pretty much like what it used to, and it doesn't quite change. I think the opportunity is to really put a blank sheet of paper and start writing. That's the only way. One possible thing that I've sometimes found useful is that if you take a learning period, where the organizational leadership starts thinking about the strategic possibilities. In the meanwhile, let the employees play with Gen AI, using it in different ways, find creative opportunities, think of what they do as individuals and what they can do with the teams. So, in some sense, your level one and level two, let the employees really start to build it out. And that's something that I have found to be far more, it seems to be a slower process, but it's actually much faster. Because by
Yeah.
the time the employees are ready, you also have the leaders who have either thought about level three or level four. At a bare minimum, they are thinking of level three. And that's really where you can really jumpstart and sort of take the organization forward. But what do you think about this?
Yeah. So, with regard to, just to add on and respond to what you just said, um, first of all, leaders can be making use of generative AI to really think more laterally, to look for novel insights about the opportunities. Not, I don't want to get too deep into consultant speak, but if you look at McKinsey models of days gone by around three horizons or four frontiers, and you start thinking about sort of reinforcing the core business, that feels like a lot of one and two work, right? But as you look at adjacent revenue streams, or even further out, visionary business model reinvention and reimagination and so forth, you're getting into three and four. Now, on this continuum. Now, it doesn't matter which thought leader you listen to as it relates to AI. The opportunity and maybe the heavy lift for people is, for all of us, is to reimagine work, so that we're not, as we have always done, to build efficiency into our sales team and predictability into our forecasts and pipeline management and customer contacts and the customer journey. And same way on talent acquisition and talent development and talent retention. All the systems that we put in place, we buy technology to add to existing systems and process. And we may tweak and optimize process. We rarely reimagine what that process could really be. And what part, again, like we talked about last time, is automatable, augmentable using AI and intrinsically human work. That's going to be fundamental. If you believe 1/100th of the Eric Schmidt prediction around 1,000 to 100,000 X gain in the capabilities of language models in the next 3 to 5 years. Well, you're dealing with at least a 10X in terms of the capability. And that means that we're going to reach a point where machines are performing at the level of the top quartile of human beings, just 10X.
Yeah.
And so now what? Now, what does that mean in terms of what jobs we're willing to outsource and how often a human has to be in the loop? And I'm a huge advocate of not even human at the loop, in the loop, but humans at the heart. Humans are human first. AI is where I am today. I don't know if that's true 3 or 4 years from now with the improvements that will come. It will have to be a lot more dependable than it is today, but I do think businesses are going to get to the point where it doesn't represent enough risk any longer to have more direct communication between an AI agent uh, and a customer. And you look at some of the examples here that you've put up. Um, these are just a few examples, but these are ways our clients, the companies in our portfolio, and other companies are leveraging this technology right now, or thinking about leveraging it. And when I think about which ones we do, um, uh, how do we prioritize this? Oftentimes with generative AI, it comes down to value versus feasibility. So high value, high feasibility. As teams invest in AI teams and data science teams, yes, that upper right hand quadrant, the green quadrant, is where we want our projects to be for the things that we can deliver now without the help of data scientists and AI engineers who are either somebody we pay as an external contractor or we've invested in our team to build that. But everywhere we go, as you know, there's a 6 to 12 month queue, and only certain projects really fit what leadership is willing to do to have the engineering team do. So the question becomes, what can we do on our own to not only, to your point, build productivity, but reimagine the customer experience or the customer journey and 10x some of those opportunities to deliver value.
The other piece that I think when I look at organizations, when you talk to them, I think one other piece that they discover is a ongoing opportunity as it sort of evolves is what kind of data do they track and what kind of data they could additionally track. I mean, that's one of the big starting points that I think we should be uh, pointing out, because some of the places where you're trying to implement something in terms of a transformation, it sort of really sometimes depends on the quality of the value and quality and value of the data that you have. So if you haven't tracked something, you have to make a beginning to feed that data in, because really that's when you start to see opportunities, patterns, trends, all that. And that's when you can actually leverage Gen AI to see beyond what you've always done. So I think that's another possibility.
So I think that's absolutely true. It's this question came up yesterday at a client site where does this eliminate or does this become a significant barrier for small and medium sized businesses who don't have high quality data today? I think what we're going to see emerge, there are certain data sets where I have to have my data. I can see many more data marketplaces popping up where I'm able to, how we used to buy lists all the time for
Yeah.
prospect lists and so forth. I can see a reemergence of that type of data becoming available, not for a prospect list, but to feed my system with, supposedly or presumably clean data. Um, but you can start to see how companies will need to leverage multiple strategies to get to the point where the data is something that they can make use of. And sometimes it may not be their data that they have to leverage, especially as it relates to go to market strategies. It doesn't have to just be my existing customer data. It might be some adjacent market where I go out and buy or license an entire data set so I can leverage that in my model.
I'm going to sort of lean on the framework of my book, Career 3.0. What's going to happen, the equivalent version in enterprise is going to be that some of the things are going to be outsourced. So there's going to be the side gig that somebody will
Absolutely.
do. So you will do things like data, I think, is going to be outsourced, and you will start to work. How do you find that? I also think that you will potentially start to supplement it in some sense. So the example that I was explaining this to someone the other day, that think about it as when Netflix looks at making a recommendation to me, it's aggregating very, very large sets of data in terms of watching patterns and what works. And then there are the peculiarities that I need to feed in. So then there is a smaller mini version of the watching patterns that I have or my family has, depending on how you want to structure it.
Sure.
So you will begin to see those kind of you know opportunities for organizations. What do you do to buy data, which is a build versus buy challenge that will come up? How do you buy data which is already available, and how do you build so that you can actually start to move in some sense to this kind of the individual benefit, and you start scaling up, and then there is workplace maturity. So I think there are multiple ways to start this. I would love to know how you would sort of describe this.
The original Netflix recommendation engine, they outsourced that
Yep.
to a competition, right? They paid a winning team $1 million.
$1 million,
Um,
yes.
it, 4 or 5 years ago, I had a great conversation with, I won't name the individual, but a really renowned data scientist. And he said, there's too many of them. There's too many data scientists in the world. And he said, and half of them are awful. So I agree with you. I don't think, I think it's a small percentage of people that will have to truly learn data science. Many people will become better. There will be a core skill around data intelligence, data awareness, data analytics, et cetera. I think that will become more core. People will have to combine data analytics with storytelling and things of that nature, something else that you're one of the best in the world at. But I don't know that there's going to be this explosion of data scientists. I think many companies, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, will outsource that capability to data science firms, maybe the same folks that are aggregating data lists. As we look at this model around individual benefit, scaling up, and workplace maturity, it's just an attempt at a timeline of how long things typically take. People spend between 3 and 12 months in organizations figuring out for themselves where the benefit lies. And if the organization's done a good job in terms of talent development and working with experts to help their teams understand where strategic value is, then you can get to this point where you're scaling up. And I don't it's embarrassing to build a model that talks about 1 to 6 years and 6 to 10 years, because again, who knows where we're going to be 3 years from now from
or,
a
or
AI
even 6
capability
months
standpoint.
from now. Or the rate of
Yes,
development is so crazy fast. It's
right.
yeah. But sorry, I interrupted the chain of thought. I mean,
No, but in that second year, as you have a growing number of employees who are figuring out individually how to extract value from these tools, which often shows itself in terms of individual productivity or the quality of work increases, or this is all over. There are examples all over the place in terms of coders right now who are becoming at least twice as fast at producing code. QA is essentially automated at this point already by many, many organizations, just using Copilot and GitHub, that combination. So as organizations scale up in that middle tranche, there are a couple of years of figuring out how does this overlay against our growth strategy. So as we're thinking about deploying this to teams, building systems and processes around it, reorganizing, developing talent in a different way, thinking of how we acquire talent differently, et cetera, there are all sorts of transformational elements that occur before you get to a maturity, right? I mean, and to your point, when you put a layer or a lens on that of the improvement of AI, the rate of improvement of AI itself, and other emerging technologies, it's a little bit of well, they call it the jagged edge of technology, right? The jagged frontier. And so it's going to be uneven. It's not going to be linear. Things are going to improve vastly all of a sudden. Then we'll get used to it, like we have with ChatGPT and GPT-4 over the last 12 months or 13 months before they released 4.0. But as soon as 5 hits, that's going to be, or whatever they end up calling it, it's going to be profound, right? And the next version of Gemini will be profound and so forth. So when we look at the investments and the impact that they're making and the impact that can have on our business, it really calls on us to be more inventive and creative and innovative and finding ways to build the creative quotient in our organizations.
I also think that just in terms of summary, I think a couple of things that we talked about today. But for me, the big takeaway is that as organizations are contemplating this, I think there are going to be a couple of people who are going to be at the bleeding edge, and you use the term the jagged edge, and sometimes I joke that it's jagged,
Get
which
cut.
is why it is the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
So it hurts when you think
Yeah.
of so that's where it is. But I think that this is an opportunity, and at some stage we should also sort of really start talking about how do you navigate that change model. How do you bring that in? Because traditionally, I think that's another opportunity where people really mess up the entire implementation of the idea, that they want to move forward in this, and that anxiety, they do what they've traditionally done, to do a big meeting, announce that, okay, from tomorrow we are going to do this, and that's a surefire way to fail. So we should at some stage talk about that also.
No
But
question.
Todd, thank you very much. Any closing thoughts before we, say thank you to our viewers?
Couldn't agree more with you on the change piece. I would just suggest that maybe change isn't strong enough of a term these days. Robin Jesuthasan, a thought leader at Mercer on Future of Work, refers to it as perpetual reinvention. So I love that phrase because it has this spirit behind it of what can we do together as a team to just get into this mode where we are continuously reinventing our organization to not just respond, but can we do scenario planning to get out in front of what if 10x happens? What if 100x happens? And so forth.